All right, I want to talk about planting a garden. I live in Virginia, and here we have this hard red clay that's impossible to work with. And so one thing you could do, what some farmers do, is they till it just to break up the soil, or they'll broad fork it, or they'll do other things to try and break up that hard clay so they can get nutrients in it. Clay is actually not that bad. It's got a lot of nutrients already in it. It's just the structure is really hard for plant roots to get through it. So you have to do things to break up the structure of the ground. Tilling works for a little bit, but with the thunderstorms that roll through here in the summer, a lot of times all that does is actually makes the compaction worse in the clay. So I'm going to talk about what I do. I got this from Ruth Stout book that my parents gave me. It's a book written in the 50s, I think. And Ruth Stout is this kind of pioneer organic gardener before there was such a thing as organic gardening. She spent years tilling her land in Connecticut and trying to amend the soil and deal with in Connecticut, rocks are a big problem with your farm. So she was just trying to deal with all this stuff. Eventually she got tired of it and she ended up putting hay, and this is basically junk hay or straw. It really doesn't matter. The point is you make it thick enough so weeds won't go through. So some people will say hay has weed seed in it. It doesn't matter. You just put it thick and every year you put more hay on it. So this little patch of land in our yard, this is where we had a lot of our utilities going through it, so I couldn't till very deep. And I tried to take the tiller to it on a spring morning when the ground was still damp and the soil was just so hard with gravel and clay. I spent probably 3 hours trying to till it and I couldn't get more than an inch into the soil. It was so hard. So I've done this deep medding method, or this deep hay method. I don't know what you want to call it. But anyways, I've done this for the last few years. I've even put wood chips and mulch on here. Not mulch, wood chips from an arborist. And you just let it pile high. I mean, when I did the wood chips, I had a foot of wood chips with 8 inches of hay on top of it. And everybody told me I was crazy and nothing's going to grow there. But I want to show you, after about 3 or 4 years of doing this, what the soil looks like. I've never tilled this. All I do is put more hay on it. Every fall, put more hay. And you can see, if I dig down here, the soil structure is really loose. And you can see there's still some clay in here, but I didn't have to till this. The earthworms did this for me. So the earthworms take the hay and they just incorporate it. You can still see some wood chips left, but it's turned into this rich humus. This is great garden soil. I'll do a soil sample on it every year, and the only thing I'm really lacking is boron. But you can see even the clay, it's very loose structure compared to the compact structure you normally get. So, you can just dig down and see how far down it goes. And again, I've never tilled this. So you just keep going, black soil upon black soil. And eventually, you get down and you've got some clay in here. A few grubs. Kill those suckers. I hate them. That is the one problem with this, is you'll attract the Japanese beetles because they love to lay their grubs in here. If I had the freedom, I'd have my chickens go through this every fall, and that would help. But I don't spray it with anything. And you can just see this lovely soil structure, very rich. You see I have potatoes already sticking up out of the ground. I've got a potato plant here and one here. I leave the little tiny baby potatoes that aren't big enough to harvest. I leave those in the soil every year. And they'll regrow, and they'll actually be some of the most successful plants that I have. So you can see a little beetle in there, maybe a dung beetle or something. I do put some of my chicken manure on top of the garden every year, really the chicken bedding. So that's the method I use. I recommend this for anybody who's lazy and just doesn't want to do the work of broad forking or tilling the ground. I mean, look at that. That's what your hands should look like after you're gardening. So, and you can see over here, for planting it every year, we just take a little bit of compost that we have from our compost pile or some chicken bedding. We put it right on top of the hay and compact it down a little bit. Right now we've got lettuce that we just planted, so you can just barely see some of the lettuce heads are starting to pop out. If you go over here, you see the first little buds of something. And then you go over here. That was planted last week. So we've got stuff sticking through. That won't be a problem at all. The garden will actually be really happy with it. Oh, the cages are to keep the squirrels out. Squirrels like to dig in this. What? You do the 3, 2, 1.